My wife inherited $4.2 million. By Thursday afternoon, she told me to pack my things and leave the house we built together. 3 days later, a lawyer called me and said 6 words that stopped my heart cold. Folks, Uncle Mickle here. I've lived long enough to know life doesn't usually flip upside down in one clean motion. It creaks. It groans. It gives you warning. But every once in a while, it just drops the floor out from under you and lets gravity do the rest. That Thursday was one of those days. I remember the exact moment because nothing about it felt special at first. The sky was gray but calm. The kind of quiet Thursday that smells like old coffee and unfinished plans. I was standing in our kitchen, barefoot, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, when Amanda walked in holding her phone like it weighed something different than it had the day before. She didn't sit down, didn't smile, didn't even look at me the way a wife looks at a husband she's shared a life with. She said my name once, just once, flat, final. That's when I knew, before she said anything else, that something had shifted. Now, let me slow this down a bit, because I don't want you thinking this was some messy marriage headed for divorce anyway. It wasn't. At least, not on the surface. We weren't screaming at each other. We weren't sleeping in separate rooms. We were ordinary, comfortable, the kind of couple people don't look twice at in the grocery store. Amanda and I had been married 17 years. 17. That's not a fling. That's not a phase. That's a life. We built routines, habits, inside jokes that only make sense at 2 in the morning when the house is quiet and the world feels small. We weren't rich. We weren't poor. We lived in that middle space where you count your money, but you don't panic about it every day. I worked steady. She worked steady. We paid the bills, argued about dumb things like paint colors and where to eat, and went to bed thinking tomorrow would look more or less like today. And then Amanda's aunt died. Now I'd heard about the aunt. Distant, wealthy, the kind of relative that sends a Christmas card with a typed signature and never really calls. When Amanda got the news, she didn't cry. She just went quiet, thoughtful, almost alert. The inheritance didn't come immediately. There were forms, calls, paperwork, waiting. Life went on in the meantime, or at least I thought it did. But that Thursday, standing in our kitchen, I realized something important in hindsight. Amanda had already made her decision before she opened her mouth. The money didn't change her in that moment. It just gave her permission. She told me the number like she was reading off a weather report. $4.2 million. No excitement. No disbelief. Just fact. Then she told me something else. She said she didn't need me anymore. Not us. Not this. Me. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't even ask why at first. I just stood there, trying to understand how a single phone call could erase 17 years, like chalk on a sidewalk. And here's the part that still messes with my head. She wasn't angry. She wasn't cruel. She was efficient, like someone closing a door they'd been planning to shut for a while. That was the moment I knew this story wasn't just about money. It was about something that had been sitting quietly between us long before that Thursday ever arrived. And I didn't yet know how deep it went. Not until the lawyer called. Before that Thursday, before the phone calls and the cardboard boxes and the quiet way a marriage can end without raised voices, life had a rhythm to it. A steady one. The kind you don't notice until it's gone. Amanda and I lived in a modest 2-story house on a street where people waved, but didn't linger. Lawns trimmed on Saturdays. Porch lights on by dusk. Nothing flashy. Nothing dramatic. It was the kind of place where life happened slowly, and that suited me just fine. Mornings were predictable. I woke up first, always had. Coffee on. News low on the radio. Amanda came down later, hair pulled back, already mentally somewhere else. We didn't talk much before work, not because we were distant, but because we didn't need to fill the silence anymore. That kind of quiet comes from years together. Evenings were simple too. Dinner at the table, unless one of us was too tired. A show we half-watched. Phones down most nights. We weren't one of those couples glued to screens. Or at least, I didn't think we were. Looking back now, I see how much I mistook routine for security. Amanda had a way of moving through life that always impressed me. Organized. Controlled. She liked lists. She liked plans. I was the opposite, steady, adaptable. The kind of man who figured things out as they came. We balanced each other. Or so I believed. We didn't talk about money much. We didn't have to. The bills got paid. The savings grew slowly. Vacations were planned within reason. When something broke, we fixed it together. There was never a sense that one of us was keeping score. That's the version of us I carried in my head, the team, the partnership, the we. But somewhere along the line, something changed. And the problem with slow changes is you don't feel them happening. They settle in quietly. Like dust on a shelf you stop checking. Amanda started spending more time on her phone. Not obsessively, just privately. She'd step into the other room to take calls, lower her voice, smile at messages she didn't share. I noticed it, but I told myself I was being paranoid. People are allowed to have private thoughts, right? Her mood shifted too, subtly. She became sharper, more decisive, less patient with uncertainty. If I hesitated, she filled the silence. If I questioned something, she shut it down quickly. Not angrily, efficiently. Still, there was no big fight, no obvious fracture. The inheritance process dragged on for weeks. Papers mailed, forms signed, calls scheduled. Amanda became more involved than I expected. She asked questions I didn't understand, used words I'd never heard her use before. Trusts, executors, assets. I figured she was just being careful. One night, not long before that Thursday, I asked her, casually, what she planned to do if the money came through. She paused longer than usual before answering. Options, she said. Just that. Options. It wasn't the word. It was the way she said it. Like she was already somewhere else, and I wasn't fully in the picture. Now, let me ask you something before I go further. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was off, but you ignored it because you didn't want to believe it? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this. I ignored it. That's the truth. I chose comfort over clarity. 17 years gives you confidence that you've earned the right not to question everything. The last normal moment I remember was dinner 2 nights before it all fell apart. We sat across from each other, eating quietly. She checked her phone once, then put it face down. I caught a look on her face that I couldn't place at the time. Not happiness, not guilt, resolution. I should have asked her then what was really going on. I should have listened to that tightening in my chest. Instead, I cleared the plates, kissed her on the cheek, and went to bed believing tomorrow would be just another day. But tomorrow was Thursday, and nothing was normal after that. Thursday didn't arrive with thunder or warning. It slipped in quietly, like it had every other week of my adult life. I woke up early, same as always, made coffee, and stood at the kitchen window watching the street come to life. Cars pulling out of driveways, a neighbor walking his dog. Normal. Amanda came down later than usual. She didn't say good morning. That was the first crack. Not big enough to panic over, just enough to notice. She poured herself coffee, leaned against the counter, and stared at her phone like she was waiting for it to speak first. I asked if everything was okay. She nodded without looking up. I let it go. Around noon, she texted me from the other room. We need to talk when you're done. No emoji, no softness, just a sentence with weight behind it. That tightening in my chest came back. I finished what I was doing and walked into the living room. She was already standing, purse on her shoulder, keys in her hand, like she was prepared for movement, like she didn't intend to sit. She told me the inheritance had cleared, that the estate paperwork was finalized, that the money was real. I congratulated her. I smiled. I reached for her hand. She stepped back. That's when the air changed. She said my name again. Calm, precise. And then she said something I wasn't ready for. This changes things. I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer right away. She looked around the room instead. The couch, the pictures on the wall, our life, cataloged in silence. Then she said it. She said she wanted me to leave. Not for a while. Not to cool off. Leave. I laughed at first. Not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to accept it. I asked her if this was stress talking, if she needed time, if we should sit down. She shook her head. I've already thought this through. That sentence landed harder than anything else, because it meant this wasn't a reaction. It was a plan. I asked her if there was someone else. She didn't answer directly, just said it wasn't relevant, that she'd outgrown this life, that she wanted more. Freedom. Control. She told me she didn't want to argue, that she'd already spoken to someone about next steps. That's when my instinct finally kicked in. I asked who. She hesitated. Just a second, but it was enough. A lawyer, she said. About the inheritance. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right. Not fear. Not confidence. Something rehearsed. I asked her if a lawyer had advised her to throw me out. She said no. She said this was her decision. She told me to take what I needed and go stay somewhere else. She said she'd change the locks if I didn't leave by the end of the day. Still no yelling. Still no tears. That scared me more than anything. I packed a bag. Not everything. Just the basics. Clothes. Toiletries. A few personal things. Each item felt heavier than it should have, like gravity had shifted inside the house. As I zipped the bag, I realized she wasn't watching me anymore. She was texting. Fast. Focused. Not once did she ask where I'd go. I stopped at the door and looked back. 17 years. Reduced to a quiet room and a woman who wouldn't meet my eyes. And as I stepped outside, one thought kept looping in my head. She's moving too fast. Folks, pause for a second. What would you have done in my position? Would you have confronted her right then? Or would you have waited and watched? Drop your answer below. I'm curious what you would have chosen. I chose to leave. But I didn't stop paying attention. Because somewhere beneath the shock and the hurt, a small, steady voice was telling me something didn't add up. And I was about to find out just how right that voice was. I spent that first night on a friend's couch, staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize, listening to the house settle around me. Sleep came in short bursts. Every time I drifted off, my mind replayed Amanda's voice, calm, efficient, already gone. By morning, the shock had thinned out enough for something sharper to take its place. Clarity. When you're blindsided, your brain scrambles to make sense of the damage. It starts lining up memories, looking for patterns, testing each one like a loose tooth. I didn't want to believe there was more to this than what she'd said. I wanted to believe it was about money and panic and poor timing. But the feeling that something had been moving behind the scenes wouldn't let me go. So I started retracing steps. I checked our shared accounts first. Nothing dramatic. No withdrawals. No sudden transfers. Clean. Too clean. Amanda was careful. Always had been. If she'd been preparing for a while, she wouldn't leave fingerprints there. Then I checked our email. Just the shared one we used for bills and appointments. Buried among utility notices and spam was a confirmation I didn't recognize. A consultation. Legal services. Dated 2 weeks earlier. 2 weeks. That was before the inheritance cleared. Before Thursday. Before she told me to leave. My chest tightened. Not with anger yet. With understanding. I called the number listed, telling myself I was just gathering information. The receptionist wouldn't say much. Confidentiality. Client privacy. But she confirmed Amanda had met with an estate attorney. Alone. And not just once. I thanked her and hung up, my hand shaking more than I expected. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It wasn't stress. It wasn't confusion. Amanda had been planning an exit while I was still making coffee for two. I sat there for a long time after that, phone on my lap, staring at nothing. The betrayal didn't hit all at once. It came in waves, each one smaller than the last, but heavier, less dramatic, more final. Then came the part that hurt the most. I remembered moments I'd brushed off, her sudden interest in how our house was titled, casual questions about beneficiaries, the way she'd corrected me once, sharply, when I referred to our future. She'd smiled afterward, like it was a joke. It wasn't. She hadn't just decided to leave me. She decided to remove me. I drove back to the house later that day, telling myself I was only there to pick up paperwork. She wasn't home. The place felt different without her in it. Quieter, like it had already accepted what was happening. I opened drawers I'd never had reason to open before. Found folders I didn't recognize. Copies of documents I hadn't seen. Notes in her handwriting, organized, deliberate, dated. She'd listed assets, potential timelines, questions to ask. I sat on the bedroom floor holding those papers, and that's when the bottom finally dropped out. Not because she wanted to leave, but because she'd been preparing to do it in a way that left me with nothing. No conversation. No warning. No dignity. I need you to understand something here. This wasn't just betrayal. This was my whole life crumbling. Have you ever been blindsided like this? Someone you trusted completely, just destroying everything? Share your story below if you've been there. Let's heal together. By the time I left the house again, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't, but the fog was gone. Amanda hadn't acted out of impulse. She'd acted out of calculation. And as painful as that truth was, it also gave me something I hadn't had since Thursday afternoon. A footing. Because if she'd been planning this carefully, then somewhere in that plan, no matter how confident she felt, there had to be an assumption. And assumptions, folks, are where even the smartest people make mistakes. I just didn't know yet what hers was. Not until the phone rang, and the lawyer said my name. I didn't answer the phone right away. It rang once, stopped, then rang again a minute later. Same number. Unknown. Normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me this call wasn't random. So I picked up. The man on the other end introduced himself calmly. Professional. Measured. He said he was the estate attorney handling Amanda's aunt's inheritance. Then he said something I didn't expect. He asked if I had a few minutes to talk. I didn't trust my voice at first, so I just said yes. He explained that he was calling because there were questions about the will, specifically about marital status, residency, and beneficiary access. He asked me how long Amanda and I had been married, whether we were legally separated, whether there were any prenuptial or postnuptial agreements. Each question felt like a slow tightening of a knot. I answered honestly. 17 years. Still married. No prenup. No separation filed. There was a pause on the line. Not awkward. Thoughtful. Then he said the 6 words I can still hear clearly, even now. She can't access it yet. I didn't react right away. My brain needed a second to catch up. He went on, explaining that the inheritance was held in a structured trust, that Amanda was named as a beneficiary, yes, but not with immediate, unrestricted control. There were conditions, safeguards, and because she was married at the time of the bequest, certain disclosures and acknowledgments were legally required, including mine. I thanked him and ended the call before he could say more. Not because I was done listening, but because I needed silence. I sat there, phone in my hand, breathing slowly. For the first time since Thursday, I felt something settle inside me. Not joy, not triumph. Balance. I didn't jump into action. I didn't call Amanda. I didn't gloat or plan some dramatic confrontation. That wasn't my nature, and it wasn't necessary. Instead, I took stock. I thought about what I wanted. Not revenge, not humiliation, just fairness, just the truth acknowledged. Amanda had moved quickly because she thought the ground beneath her was solid, that the money had already changed the rules, but it hadn't, not yet. And that meant I had time. Time to understand the situation fully. Time to consult my own attorney. Time to decide how I wanted to respond. Not as a wounded husband, but as a man who deserved a say in how his life unraveled. I spent the next few days quietly preparing. I gathered documents, marriage certificates, financial records, anything that painted a clear picture of 17 years of shared life. Not as ammunition, but as context. At night, I thought about Amanda, about the woman I'd loved, about the woman who'd looked at me on Thursday and said she didn't need me anymore. The anger came in waves, but it never took over. What I felt more than anything was resolve. She'd chosen efficiency over honesty. I would choose calm over chaos. Here's where I made my choice. I wasn't going to destroy her. I wasn't going to race her to the bottom. I was going to let the truth do the work for me. And I want to ask you something here. Not as a storyteller, but as a man who's been burned. Do you believe in revenge, or do you believe in walking away? When someone destroys your trust, what's the right move? I decided my move would be patience. Because when someone shows you who they really are, the most powerful response isn't rage. It's clarity. And clarity was about to change everything. Amanda called me that Monday morning. No greeting. No small talk. Just my name. Tight and clipped, like she was already late for something important. Why is the estate lawyer asking about you? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch. Not to be cruel, but to let her hear what uncertainty sounds like. I'm not sure, I said finally. Calm. Even. Why would he? Her breath caught. Just slightly. Enough. They said there's an issue, she snapped. That I can't move anything yet. That you need to sign something. There it was. The confidence she'd worn like armor on Thursday was gone. In its place was urgency. Control slipping through her fingers. I told her I'd spoken with my own attorney. That I was reviewing everything carefully. That I wasn't rushing into any decisions. She raised her voice then. First time in 17 years I can remember her doing that with me. This is my money. I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I just said, it's more complicated than that. She demanded we meet. That day. In person. She wanted to clear things up. We met at a small conference room at the attorney's office. Neutral ground. Fluorescent lights. No emotion-friendly corners. Just truth and paperwork. She didn't look at me when she sat down. The lawyer explained everything slowly. Methodically. Trust structure. Marital disclosures. Waiting periods. Conditions tied to the bequest. The more he spoke, the more Amanda shifted in her chair. Then came the line that ended it. Until these requirements are satisfied, he said, the assets remain inaccessible. Amanda turned to me. Her eyes were sharp now, but not powerful. Desperate. You're doing this on purpose, she said. I met her gaze. Steady. Quiet. No, I said. You did. The room went still. There was no shouting. No dramatic exit. Just the sound of someone realizing they'd miscalculated. And this is the moment everything changed. Tell me, are you rooting for me right now? Or do you think I went too far? Be honest. I can take it. Amanda didn't get the money that day. Or the next. Or the next. What she did get was a lesson she hadn't planned for. Actions don't disappear just because you think you're untouchable. I signed nothing that erased my dignity. I agreed to nothing that pretended Thursday hadn't happened. And for the first time since this all began, I walked out of a room feeling taller than I had when I walked in. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't lost myself. The noise faded after that meeting. No more frantic calls. No more sharp messages. Just distance. The kind that settles and once the truth has been spoken out loud, and there's nothing left to argue about. Amanda and I didn't reconcile. We didn't explode either. We became two people standing on opposite sides of a line that had finally been drawn clearly enough for both of us to see. Lawyers handled what needed handling. Conversations were brief, practical, almost polite. The house sold a few months later, not out of spite, not as punishment, just because it was no longer a home. It was a structure full of echoes. Every room held a version of us that didn't exist anymore. I moved into a smaller place, quieter, less maintenance, the kind of place you choose when you're rebuilding instead of performing. At first, the silence felt heavy. Then it started to feel honest. People asked how I was doing. Some meant it. Some were just being polite. I gave the same answer most days. I'm steady. And that was the truth. I didn't come out of this richer. Not financially, anyway. But I came out clearer. I learned how much I'd wrapped my sense of worth around being needed. How easily comfort can be mistaken for loyalty. How money doesn't create character, it exposes it. There were nights I replayed things I wish I'd said differently. Moments I wished I'd seen sooner. That's unavoidable. But the regret never outweighed the relief of knowing I didn't betray myself to keep someone else comfortable. Amanda eventually gained access to the inheritance. That was always going to happen. The trust did what it was designed to do. Slow things down, force accountability. What it couldn't do was protect her from the consequences of how she treated people along the way. We don't talk now. Not because of anger. Because there's nothing left to say that wouldn't reopen a door best left closed. I sometimes wonder who she is now. Who she became when the money settled and the dust cleared. I don't wish her harm. I just don't carry her with me anymore. Looking back now, I wonder if I do it all the same way again. What about you? If you could go back and handle your worst betrayal differently, would you? Or was the pain necessary to become who you are now? Let me know. What stayed with me wasn't the loss. It was the realization that dignity is quieter than pride, and far stronger. I wake up these days without the tightness in my chest, without the sense that something's being managed behind my back. I make my coffee. I step into my mornings honestly. And that's worth more than I ever realized while I was busy holding things together that didn't want to stay whole. Some endings don't need fireworks. They just need truth. And the courage to walk forward once you've finally seen it. By the time the paperwork was finished and the dust truly settled, I had learned something that took me half a lifetime to understand. Money doesn't turn good people bad. It doesn't magically make bad people worse either. It just removes the masks we wear when we think we still need someone else. For a long time, I asked myself whether I should have fought harder to save the marriage, whether walking away with my dignity intact was enough. And the answer I keep coming back to is this. Some things aren't meant to be repaired once they've been exposed. I didn't lose my wife that Thursday. I lost the version of her I believed in. And as painful as that was, it freed me from carrying a future that wasn't built for two anymore. So here's my final question for you, and I really want to hear your thoughts. Is it better to forgive and move on, or to make sure they understand exactly what they lost? There's no wrong answer. Drop it in the comments. Because we've all been there in some form, betrayed by a partner, a friend, a family member. And every time, we're faced with the same choice. Do we abandon ourselves to keep the peace? Or do we choose honesty and live with the consequences? I chose honesty. Not because it was easy, because it was necessary. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Uncle Mickle's voice travels. And here's the truth I earned the hard way. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And make sure you don't lose yourself trying to prove your worth to someone who already decided not to see it.